Welcome back to SIG Cougar Build Part 9C. I know at the end of Part B I said that would conclude 9, but since we're still tinkering with filling holes up and stuff and a few other things we got to touch on, and I figured we'll just keep going with 9 and we'll just call it 9C. So on this part we are going to be going to looks like step 36, and what steps 36 is this little piece of triangular stock, trailing edge stock, and it fits right there. The instructions say to cut it in half and then gouge out. You might, I don't know if you can see it or not, let me get a pencil here, but I have drawn on here in felt pen little tiny spot where these brass tubes are, so this can slide up flush against the back of the wing. So what I'm going to do is get that gouged out and show you just a little bit of that, and we'll stick it on there and we'll get past this real quick. So give me a second, let me get my stuff and we'll get going. Well, I'm sure you noticed that I got a landing gear sticking out here, my nose wheel assembly. I figured out how I was going to do it. It's not really glued in, I just put it in there for size because I need to know exactly where this is going to go before I put the front block on and the firewall and stuff. So that's what this is. Let me show it to you real quick. It's a platform. I made 2 maple rails and glued it to the platform. This is a 5-ply 1/8, and it's basically going to work like that. I still have to notch it out a little bit, but I figure I'll get to that when I Dremel out the rest of this, and it's in there far enough and high enough that it should stop the squishiness in the top. So hopefully that'll work. Get that out of the way, and clamps. Now on the inside I have light ply doublers that go up against the sidewall of the fuselage, and that supports the top of the platform of the landing gear. So that's what these are. Okay, now on to this. This trailing edge stock needs to be cut in half, and these tubes are 1/8 inch, so you got to cut 1/8 inch out, about that much out of the back here, which I've already done. I didn't think you needed to see me whittle that out. I don't know if you can see that or not. I'll probably have to zoom in. And to cut it in half, and I almost have it cut in half, but not quite, because when you put it on there, you don't have to cut all the way through, and it saves you a little seam, but then you can just kind of push it down. It bends right on that cut. It's just something I do because I can do it. It's nothing important. You can cut it in half and have a perfectly good piece, and it's not a big deal because it's going to be wrapped with fiberglass anyway, so it's not a strength issue or anything. It's just laziness, I guess, cutting it all the way through. I don't know. But this needs to be glued in now, and what I'll do is I'll stick some CA glue on there, clamp it, and get that taken care of. So let me get my CA wherever it might be. Oh, it's over here. And let's see, these glue bottles are getting kind of bad, so what I'm going to do is take a minute, clean this thing up, and then I'll be right back. Nozzle's cleaned up now, and now we'll install this piece. I don't know if you can see, I did cut it in half. It doesn't quite go all the way to the back of the plywood platform. I'm not sure why it happened that way, but it did. Not a big deal. So what I'm going to do is just lay a little bit, if I can get this to go down. A little bit here, a little bit up here. But you don't want to get it inside these Airlon tubes, the brass tubes, because if you do, then you're going to have a lot more problems than you want to deal with. So I keep the glue well away from it. I put a little bit on there, a little bit here. Across the top. And a little glue on here also. Get some clamps, clamp her down, and we're good to go. Then I gotta find out who is pulling up into my driveway because my alarm dogs went off. I'll be back momentarily. Got everything clamped down. It's been sitting a little while. Took care of my dog problem. And now I can get back to this. Take these clamps off. And what they say to do, we'll put this back in the saddle since it's easier to manipulate, is instead of sanding this flush, they want you to lay down some scrap balsa, and they call it WS. And WS is located, it's not a part that you have to cut out like on a sheet like this. It's not one of these pieces. It's just a piece of scrap that you use you take this pattern off of here, the WS. It's on the center fold-out sheet, and it shows you the tail design and stuff like that, and how to lay out the wing colors and whatever. But the patterns right here you have to use that they say that you should use, and that will just lay right here. It just makes a big kind of a loop across here, not very deep, but anyways, you lay it on there, you sand that flush. So we will get to that real quick. And it says to use 3 30-second scrap, and I'm gonna have to dig for that. It's over here in a pile because you see me cut the stuff out and I whipped it over to the other side of the table. So now I gotta go through the pile, find the scraps, and draw them out, and then we'll cut them out. So give me a second. I found a couple pieces of scrap. These are little chunks of 3 30-seconds left over from the fuselage. And they're just big enough to cover up the WS pattern right there. And I'm not one for cutting up my plans or even a centerfold sheet just because the pattern's on there. So what I do is I get a piece of paper like that, lay it over the top, trace them out. Then what I'll do is cut these out. So let me cut these out. I don't think you want to watch me wheel a pair of scissors. So I'm going to get these cut out, and then we'll head on to the next step. Finished cutting them out. There they are. I found a different piece out of my scrap box, a 3 30-second. This is a little softer because it didn't need to be as hard as what they were showing it there. And when I get them cut out, they'll be sitting right about there. And what I'm going to do is put these two little pieces on here like that, because there's enough to cut two out. And you're probably thinking, well, how am I going to get them to stay on there? Am I going to glue them on, or am I going to tape them on, or what exactly is it going to do? Well, I'll tell you. What I'm going to use is this 3M Super 77. This comes in handy for sticking stuff together like that. If you put it just on the paper and let it dry, it will stick to the balsa wood long enough and good enough to cut out your piece of balsa. So what I'm going to do is quickly spray these and let them dry for a few minutes and stick them on this wood. So again, we're going to cut away. I'll be back. I thought I should show you at least spraying one. I did one, and now you can see my fingers are sticky. So if you want to wear latex gloves or something like that, that would be a good idea. But I sprayed one on one side, now I got to spray it on the opposite side. So I did that side on one, so I got to spray this side on this one. Just a quick spray like that, and that's all you got to do. You can see how sticky that is. Now if I can get it off my finger, we'll be in good shape. Now I see a dry spot, so I'm going to have to hit that. Okay. I'll use my knife to hold it down, get it off of me. Okay. I'll be back when this is dry, and then we'll stick them on the balsa wood and cut them out. I'm going to stick this on this knife and set it on here the best I can, as straight as I can. And somewhere about, oh goodness, I'll go with it this way. And you just kind of line the paper up to the bottom of the piece of balsa that you're going to use. Kind of like that. It'll stay on there and then it'll peel right back off. Not a biggie. And somehow I messed this up. So I'm going to have to find another piece of wood, which is right here. Doesn't matter if I messed it up or not. I'll just stick this dude right on here and we'll cut it off. Just like that. And what I'm going to do is I can either cut it out with a knife or go over to my jigsaw and cut it off. So I'll pick one and I'm going to do it, and then I shall return again. Done. Got the parts. There they are. And all I need to do is take this paper off, and you'll see how easy it is to take off. It's just that I can't pick up on the edges because my fingers are just not that graceful. But you can see it just peels right up. No problem. It's not sticky, even though these still are a little bit. Not bad. This one's going to come up just like that. And one goes here. And one goes there. I don't know why they wanted them to be 3/32, but they did, so that's the way they are. Okay. It appears that their template's a bit long. You see my center line is right there. I don't know how well that's going to show. Let me spin this a little bit. Does that help? I don't know if that helps or not. Move my coffee here so I don't spill it. Get it lined up with the camera, something like that. And this is supposed to go on the edge of this trailing edge stock you just glued on. And you can probably see that the center line is here and the edge of the piece is there. So what I'm going to have to do is get this set up where it's supposed to be, cut it on the center line, and do the same with the other. That way they'll fit in the center a little better. So let me do some trimming. You see me do that kind of stuff. So I'll be back with these two pieces trimmed up, and we should be good to go with some gluing. Oh, there they are. They're cut out to the size I need. Center line's right on the center line. What I did is I just stuck them in the miter box and laid them up here, marked it, and then stuck it in the miter box, cut it off, and no big deal. So that's where they go, and that's where we need to glue them on. So I guess grab the glue and put them on. And line it up and stick it down. Oops, that moved a little bit. This is a medium set CA. I could have used quick set, you know, the fast drying stuff, but just using what I have at hand at the moment. Some down the middle. Sorry if I get out of the frame a little bit, but That's what happens sometimes when you're zoomed in. Okay, press them down, hold them for a few seconds. And I'm going to let that sit and dry. I'm going to start with some 80 grit to knock this down. You can see 80 grit. And I'm going to sand this leading edge part flush, and then I'll work my way around. Since that is really thick, I could have went probably with 16th and got away with it. Well, I found it was going to be easier if I took this off the airplane, so I'm going to continue on. Alright, there it is. You can see there's not a whole lot of this left. It's just basically to fill that little lip right there, and I can feel that I didn't quite get it all. So I'll just take some more swipes at it. And this is 220. I just changed the paper so I know what it is now. A little bit more. Okay, that's good enough. So what I'm going to do, I think, is deviate from the book a little bit, because what they want you to do now is put the block on and have it all shaped so you can put this front fillet on, so you can ferret all in. I have to wait to do that until I have my landing gear mounted, or at least the platform stuck in there, so I can finish up the rest. Let me think about this for a moment and get some things around, and I think I'm going to show you some fiberglassing. Give me a second and I'll get my glassing stuff together. As you can tell, it's been more than just a few minutes. It's been a couple hours. Went and got a haircut and things like that. There's one thing I should tell you before we go too far, before we get into glassing, is that this one right here, this little pattern WSS on the centerfold, is actually made from plywood. That is supposed to be used instead of the balsa on your filler right here. You lay your piece of plywood over the top of that, and that's just more reinforcing if you feel that you need it. In my case, I don't feel that I need it because I did the micro balloons and epoxy in the tube, and it makes it a little less crushable. On my past models, I did do this same thing, and I still put the plywood over top, and it didn't really help anything. It just made it harder to fill in to get a good covering on it. Otherwise, you got that great big piece of plywood there that looks like the bottom of any ARF. So I kind of leave that out. Since it's going to be glass, I'm not too worried about the plywood. So that is that. Let's talk a little bit about fiberglassing. There's many ways to do it. I am no expert. By far, I'm not an expert. There's millions of people that know more about it than I do. I will share with you everything that I know about it, and you can research it on your own, and I'm sure you'll find a bunch of things on it that I don't cover. Okay, there's different ways to do fiberglass work. You can use epoxy, which is good because we have a foam core, and if any foam's exposed, you don't want to use polyester resin, you want to use epoxy. I don't like using epoxy because it's really hard to sand. It's not one of my preferred ways to go. If you have any distortions from the epoxy that you put down, you might be able to sand it. I'm not really up on it. There might be some sandable stuff out now, I have no idea. But I've used polyester for years and I'm used to it. That's what I like, so that's what I use. But from what I understand, epoxy is harder to sand. You get waves in it. You can try to knock it down, but the only way to get it out is when you paint your model and you put layers of primer on it, and the more layers of primer you put on, that's more weight. So I use something that I can sand and level without adding the excess weight. A lot of guys say, well, I just lay down my fiberglass and I'll tape it down to the wing, and I'll use CA on it. Well, that might work. I'm not sure the tensile strength of CA as far as putting on a piece of fiberglass. If the glue dries too hard, then a layer of fiberglass like this, you can bend it and it'll crack. So be careful of what you use. But I think that if you're going to do fiberglass, do it right. Use a glass cloth. Just don't put the epoxy or the resin on the balsa wood, because eventually balsa wood gets dry and expands and contracts, and eventually if you have just a coating of epoxy or coating of resin straight on the balsa wood, it's going to split. And the fiberglass cloth will prevent that from happening. So don't skip the glass cloth. If you're going to do it, go all the way and do it right. It doesn't take much longer and your results will be better. That's my opinion. A lot of guys will argue with me about that, and that's happened, but I'm set in my ways. I've been doing this way for many years, so I'm going to show you how I do it. And I like using polyester resin, so let me get on with that and I will start explaining all this stuff. Okay, fiberglassing. In the kit they give you this piece of fiberglass right here, and I showed you before, it lays down the center section, something like that. And what you're going to need are a few things, and mixing cup, little medical mixing cup. This is a 1 ounce cup. Get them pretty much anywhere, medical supply stores, places like that. I buy them by the bag. They're like $200 in a bag off of eBay. They don't cost very much, $5 or something like that for a couple hundred. Need a brush. This is a number 12. It's kind of wide. It's a little wore out, but it would be about like that. More like this when it's new. This is a number 12 also. This is a hairbrush. This is a type of nylon. It doesn't melt underneath the chemicals of a glass or the thinner. But my favorite are the hairbrushes like this. And this is a number 10. It's a little bit skinnier. As you can see, the handle's a little longer. The length of the handle doesn't matter. It's how you can get it applied. I'm not really sure which brush I'm going to use at the moment. I just wanted to show you the different types of brushes that I have, that I use. You're going to need paper towels. Those are just Scott shop towels. They're my favorite. Just telling you what I use and not really endorsing anything here, guys. Here we go. Latex gloves. Keep your hands clean. This stuff isn't supposed to be very good for your skin, so I recommend using these rubber gloves. So I'm going to pull out a couple and get rid of the box. Okay. Next, your fiberglass. SIG makes a good fiberglass. It's a good consistency. It works well when you spread it. But the problem with the SIG fiberglass polyester resin, it's expensive. Okay, so after doing some exploring and talking to people, I found out that the SIG resin is what they call a Class B resin, and it has wax mixed into it. So when it dries completely. It's slippery, it has a little waxy finish that you got to sand off, not a big deal. And the Class A resin and polyester resin doesn't set up, it stays a little tacky. You can let it sit for however, as many days as you want, it's still going to be sticky. It's made and designed that way. The difference is the wax. Polyester resin will not dry as long as there's air hitting it. If it's sealed away from the air, I was told it will dry hard. And that's what the wax is for. When you apply it, the wax comes to the top, makes a coating over top of the polyester resin, and allows it to get hard. That's what I'm told. The resin I use, you can buy this anywhere, hardware stores, whatever, for boat repair. And this is the Bondo brand. This is the brand that I use. It says it's sandable within 2 hours, and it pretty much is. But the problem with the Bondo brand, it's a little thick. It goes on a little thick. So when you brush it on, it's a little heavier, and you usually use more than what you need. So I've been researching this a lot, and I found that you need a styrene monomer as a thinner. And the mix of the thinner and the fiberglass is 20-to-1. 20 parts the polyester resin, 1 part is styrene monomer. Any good fiberglass place will have styrene monomer. Marine supplies, the places that repair fiberglass boats, they'll have this stuff. You can't find it anywhere else. The place I get mine from, US Composites. It's a little pricey because of the shipping. It's a flammable thing, so it's a little bit, you know, the hazardous material shipping costs are a little higher, but it's worth having. I got a quart of it here, and it lasts me forever. So when I mix up my polyester resin in here, I'm going to put 20 parts of resin to 1 part of styrene monomer, and it'll give me the right consistency. It just kind of thins it up a little bit. Okay, that is that. Acetone for cleanup. You got to have acetone for cleanup. And one thing I didn't grab is a little jar to clean your brushes in. And this is a catalyst for the polyester resin. I put it in this CA type bottle. I get these from the hobby shop for, I don't know, it says $1.50 for one of these, and I've never had to clean it. All I do is when it's empty, refill it. The can of resin comes with its own catalyst, so usually when I get a can of resin, I'll squirt it into my bottle and refill my bottle, but as you can see, it's quite full, so I don't need to do that. Alright, I think that takes us to the point of actually putting the fiberglass on the wing. So let me get things straightened around, get this set up where you can see it, and we'll get started. Oh, one more thing. Almost forgot. You're going to need some kind of a spatula. You could use an old expired credit card if you don't have these. I call them spatulas, but they're called actually a spreader. You can buy these at any department store that sells excuse me, that sells automotive goods. They're basically used for spreading Bondo and stuff, and wherever they sell Bondo, they'll sell spreaders. This was actually a large one. and all I did was I cut it up into chunks, and that's it. Also, in the mail you probably get offers for credit cards, and they send you this little fake plastic credit card. Well, those work really well too, so don't throw those away. Just rip them out of the junk mail, tear up your junk mail, whatever, and keep those little fake credit cards. You can cut them up into sizes that you want, or use the whole thing and use that as a spreader. Alright, now we're ready to go. Let me get things squared away and I'll be right back. Got my gloves on. I've already dumped 1 cc of the styrene monomer into the mixing cup. And something I should have mentioned is you need a stir stick. I got a bunch of these, but those are my emergency sticks. But I like using these dental, I don't know, what do they call them? Spatulas that dentists use. I like using those. You can get these at places like Hobby Lobby and stuff like that. The better arts and crafts stores carry them. And I'm going to mix up 20 cc's of resin, polyester resin. That'll give me my 20-to-1 mixture. Yeah, if I can get the top off. I've used this once on my kid's boat, so it's gonna be tough. Okay, find where the CC is, right there, and be right there's 20 cc's. It doesn't have to be exact, just very close. It'll be just a hair above 20 cc's to make up for the 1 cc of styrene monomer. And I'll mix that up. Get it well stirred in. This is my catch-all pad. I got 3 different paper towels here. This is for the spills and things. This one's for after we're done, and this one is for patting down the resin when we get that. Put the cap back on here. Give me a second, I'm going to move everything out of the way and draw the wing in and zoom the camera down. Then we'll mix in the catalyst and we should be good to go. In the instructions on the resin it says 10 to 12 drops per ounce, and since we're only going 20 cc's, not quite an ounce, 10 drops would probably be good. A little more won't hurt. Never had a problem with it being more. Just dries a little quicker perhaps. And we'll mix it up really good. Like I said before, you don't want to get the polyester resin on the foam because it will attack the foam. Make sure it's straight. I don't tape down my glass cloth. Oops, I just put some on my bench. That's going to make a nice spot on there. And you just work in your resin through your cloth. And you can see it going through. It changes the color of the cloth just a bit. And you're kind of pulling the cloth down and out to the sides, kind of stretching it out as you go. like that. And it doesn't matter if you go out a little ways, it won't hurt nothing. And you just kind of pull your resin down with it. And now we're down to where the wooden dowels are. I'll set this over here. That's what the scissors are for. Just a quick snip, get it around the wooden dowels. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Something like that. And you just keep going around. Okay, with your spreader, you want to take off as much resin as you can just by dragging it over the cloth. It presses the resin down to the wood. You get better contact with the wood, and you're also wiping the excess off. And this in turn will save you weight in the long run. I am going to put another coat of resin on here. After this dries, I'll come back and put another coat of resin on there just to fill the weave. And that is what I will sand to smooth things out. Okay. Now I have to get something to set this wing on. Change the camera angle a little bit. And you see it's not quite enough to go all the way around, but that's okay. Snip off the excess, the frayed edge. Don't need that gumming up the works. And I'm bringing the resin just past the edge on the bottom side. Okay, done as far as we can go with that. And I'm going to clean my brush immediately. If you let your brush sit too long, you'll end up losing your brush to the polyester resin. Just dipping it into the acetone, wiping it off with a paper towel. That's good. Get my spreader. And wipe the excess off. I go over it a couple times with the spreader and make sure I get as much off as I possibly can. Make sure that cloth is laying down the best I can get it. Okay. Now what I do is I'll take, now this one got kind of messed up, so get a fresh paper towel. What I like to do is I'll fold up a paper towel like this, and I'll just kind of dab it and soak up any excessive wet spots that I can find. Something like that. Let me flip it over. Same with this side. We got some really big wet spots there. And now we'll let that sit and dry, and we'll come back in a few and we'll show you the rest. During the break I added a little bit of extra fiberglass to that one spot that didn't have any glass, so I decided I would show that to you real quick. Here's the glass, and it's like I was showing you on the top here. Just laid it up like the rest, right over top. And that brings us to the point where we need to cut it off. And I usually just use a knife, but this might be a little thick, but I'm going to give it a shot. Knives usually work the best. I'll get it close and then I'll sand it off with probably some 80 grit just to flush it up. Something like that. Oh, can't seem to get my hands on it here. Well, evidently not the sharpest knife in my collection. But there it is. Alright, I was going to show you this. Electric scissors. Best thing there is for cutting fiberglass. Just and it just zips it right off. Perfect thing for cutting fiberglass. If you don't have one, I'd suggest you pick yourself up one if you're going to be doing fiberglass. Works great. I can get them any department store or excuse me, fabric store or whatever. Let me get this out of the way. Get the 80 grit. I'm going to take this down level. I'm just going to make it level with the trailing edge of this piece. You don't need to do anything more than just sand it flush. And I always use 80 grit on this to sand down fiberglass resin because it seems to cut it quicker. And if you use anything else, it's just going to polish it up and you really don't want to sit here all day. A little bit in the center where the two meet. Get rid of any of the spiky pieces that are on it. And the spikes usually end up on the edges. I can see one right there, that's a pretty nasty one. You don't have to worry about leveling the edges. We'll take care of that later with some polyester resin and microballoon. And I probably won't do anything about it until after I glass the whole wing. And for the screw holes, just take your knife, cut them out. That's all there is to it. If you put a second layer of polyester resin on here, it might not be as easy to do. So I suggest you do it while there's only one layer. That's as far as we can go on the wing. I need to bring the fuselage back out, and so we can do the front fillet here. Oh, I missed a couple of things here. Right around the wooden dowels. And we'll work on the retracts, side plates, the platform and things like that, and then we'll move on. Now we're looking at the drawing from the centerfold, and I'll bring my pencil in here so I can point at things. See the heavy black line? That's the outline of the plate, which is right in here. And at the bottom you'll see a double line. This line here is the bottom of the side plate, and this line here represents the landing gear plate itself. I didn't draw the rest of it in because I didn't think it was really necessary. I just wanted you to see what it looks like when it sits inside the fuselage. I could add some bracing for this bottom platform, but I don't think it's going to be necessary since the 5-ply is going to be pressing up against the edges of the light ply. It shouldn't flex much. And if I do need to add some reinforcing up on top here, I can always do that later through the top. It's not a big deal. And same with the bottom. There's going to be a couple of really small pieces of bracing underneath, but nothing to write home about. I'll show you those in a few minutes. So let's get that piece in there. To set this piece in, I'm just going to use some medium gap filling CA. And when it goes in, this will be the bottom side. And this notch right here is cut out for those little triangle pieces I put on the formers to support the formers. That's all that is. That will slide in right underneath the triangular stock, the top piece triangular stock. Slide it in on the side, glue it, and press it in. Get that done. And I'm going to use quite a bit of CA because I want this to stay. I don't want it to accidentally pop out or come loose or anything like that. So I'm just going to use quite a bit, fill it all up. And it's going to be some along this edge here, like so. And we'll just set her in there. Make it even with the triangular stock. And I'm just going to squeeze her down. Oops, I moved it. Okay, there we go. I'm going to clamp that in place. Grab me a couple clamps. And about like that. That should be good enough for now. And the second when that dries, I'll be back and then we'll put in the main plate. We're ready to put in the main plate. Not much to it. It's just going to slide right in on the top. Oh, there we go. Just like that. Make sure she slides in all the way. Something seems to be hanging her up a little bit. There she goes. Had to kind of nudge it past the triangular stock because it slides into the former right here. I haven't notched it. It slides into F2, which will help keep everything separated. Put it back in there just to test fit one more time. And you can see how much of that's going to interfere with the retraction of landing gear. So F2 is kind of important to get braced up, and I think this platform is going to do it. So let's glue this baby back in, and we'll lay some gap filling CA in there. Great big bead both sides. A little bit up on the side of the plywood where the plate will touch, inside the former where the plate will go through. And now we slide this plate in there. I'm going to slide it in above, and then I'm going to push it down into it. And down. Oops, well, my landing gear flipped around on me, it doesn't matter. And just a little bit of weight like that, hold it in place. I'm going to give it a little kick underneath. And that should do it. I think I will put the bracing in, which are just these little pieces of 1/8 inch light ply, little strip. I cut them into little pieces. I'm just going to lay one in the front, one in the back, both sides, and that will brace it up. So give me a second and we'll get those in. I have two of the bracing in, so I'm going to show you the last two. The longer one I'm going to put towards the back, and the shorter one's going to be in the front. It's not a real big deal. Excuse me. I usually hold it with a knife since it's small and my fingers are clumsy. I'll use a knife to hold it. Put a good amount of glue on here because I want to make sure that it is glued securely. Then I will slide it on in and I put it right next to the little triangular blocks that support my former, which is F2, and push that in tight. Then I'll do the same thing to the front one. Like that, and that goes in towards the front, making sure that it's on the plywood beyond where the firewall is going to attach. And that should do it right there. Press it down to the place I want it. Give them a little kick. And that's it. That's all there is to putting in the landing gear. It's as simple as I could make it. And I think with that, we're going to wrap up this video because I am over my 30-minute mark. So there you have the retract. And next we're going to be adding the firewall. I'll be removing the retract and I'm going to tack on this block so we can sand that in. That way we can put the wing back on, put the fillet in, and finish up the wing. So until next time, have a good one.